Now, that's something that I did wrong, I would say, when I got started in the cloud native space. Hello, no, welcome back to my channel. Now, in this video, we are going to talk about security scanning. I've talked in previous videos about security scanners and how to use them, specifically how to get started with the all-in-one security scanner called Trivy, because I work at Acro Security and that's our open source security scanner. Now, before we get started, for those who are new to my channel, my name is Anais, and usually I talk about Kubernetes and cloud native tutorials and tools and the ecosystem, which is really exciting. Now, in previous videos, I talked about Trivy and the Trivy operator and security scanning and all the fun stuff. And then I realized, do you even know what security scanners are? Because there are not many resources that explain what is a security scanner, why do you use a security scanner, when do you use a security scanner, how to use them, and similar, right? Now, in this video, I kind of want to walk through it a bit. See, the thing is, within your team, whether you're working by yourself or within a team, you will work with different resources across your development lifecycle. So if you have your development lifecycle in the development stage, you will use packages, you will use file systems, you will use libraries, you will use other people's container images and similar. That's what you use at the beginning when you get started. Now, at that stage, you are acting as an engineer likely, you are developing the application and you want to scan those third-party resources that you're using for vulnerabilities, for instance. So in that scenario, at that beginning, you will scan for vulnerabilities, okay? Now, once you've developed the application, you want to now package it up. And that's something you will do with, for example, a Docker file. You will package up your application into a container image that you can reuse across your environments, that you can deploy in your staging environment, in your production environment, that you can share with other people, and so on, right? So you have a container, you can do Docker run container, and so on. Now, to develop the container, you will need a base image. Ideally, you will have a multiple stage build, so you will need more than one base image for that container. Then you have the container, you have the Docker file, you want to build a container, right? Now, you have to make sure the Docker file is configured correctly. And that's when you enter the next stage of not just having vulnerability scans, but now you want to have misconfiguration scans. Now, configuration refers to anything that deals with your application. How is your application supposed to run? What's supposed to go into your application? What is your application dependent on? And similar, right? So you have configurations, and we are all human. We make mistakes. There will be misconfiguration issues. Now, like always, I have a blog post that details everything I'm talking about in this video. The blog post is linked below, and I'm providing several examples of misconfiguration issues that caused lots and lots and lots of issues, okay? You don't want to expose sensitive data. You don't want to expose... There are hospitals that expose hospital data. There are dating apps that expose dating information, including sensitive images and similar, right? You don't want to deal with that because you misconfigured something. Okay, so we are here. We have our Docker file. We check that it's configured properly. We are packaging up our application into a container image, okay? Now, at this stage, you can run the container image, but you can't really deploy that easily, right? You might need some infrastructure as code configuration, such as Terraform configuration, to configure your application and how your application is supposed to run, for example, in your Kubernetes cluster. So you write the infrastructure as code configuration, and this is also another stage where you might expose secrets. You might do all kinds of things wrong in the configuration file because ultimately a lot of us are engineers or DevOps people, but we might not be security professionals, right? We might know some of the must-do related to security, but we might not know general best practices. And that's also where security scanners can help you. They can help you to identify what you should be doing, best practices. So what misconfiguration scans do, for instance, you have a set of here's best practices, okay? Best practices of configurations. And it takes as input your configuration file and compares it to those best practices. Now, if you're not following those best practices, it will tell you, hey, you might want to update this part, or you might want to update that part, okay? That's what configuration scans does. Now, at this stage, you have the application, you have it packaged up, you have the configuration files, right? Now, all of this is likely something that people do, especially engineers, do by themselves, right? We talk in the space, in the industry, a lot about shifting left. Now, I did another video about shifting left. Shifting left is basically the idea that you give more to the engineers to do more work. Now, not more work, but ultimately you want to shift a lot of the responsibilities to the engineers. You want the engineers to package up the application, you want them to write the configurations for the deployment and so on. And that's nice because the engineer is supposed to know the application inside out. The thing is, a lot of engineers, their main responsibility is doing engineering work, doing the software development to develop the actual application and the features and all the good stuff, right? Their part is not to be security professionals. So while writing the configurations for the deployments is usually part of their job, what is not part of their job, usually, is scanning for security issues. You need to have the deployment configuration files to deploy the application. You do not need to scan for security issues to deploy the application. So a lot of times we treat security more as a reactive thing rather than as a proactive thing. So reactive means that we don't really actively scan for security issues and fix them, but we wait until there's something critical that we do have to fix. Otherwise our application might not work, or because a user complained, or because a security researcher complained, or somebody else, right? And that's reactive. This reactive approach is really not ideal, and we want to shift into a more proactive approach where we scan our resources proactively and see like, hey, what's wrong? What can we do? So the thing is, a lot of the first steps that I detailed, the packaging and the configurations and so on, is really a you have to do it kind of thing, right? Manual kind of thing, especially right at the beginning. And then you can automate the process. You can automate the process of packaging up the application in a Docker image, container image, and also scanning the configuration files for misconfiguration issues and so on. You can automate it in your CI/CD pipeline. And if you're within a team, this is where the security scanning shifts from the engineer to the DevOps people, to the SRE people, other people who are dealing with the pipelines. Now, maybe the engineers in your team are still dealing with the pipelines. It really depends on who's dealing with which part of the development lifecycle, right? So then you can automate processes, and that's maybe where somebody else might become responsible for the other parts of your stack, right? And the security scanning. And then once you've done that, once you've done the automated security scanning and you're ready to deploy your application, that's when you want to have in-cluster security scanning of your running workloads. So whenever some new workload is detected in your environment, you want to scan those for security issues, for vulnerabilities, for misconfiguration issues, for exposed secrets, for user access and so on, and flag anything that you don't want to have within your infrastructure, within your deployments, okay? So this is ultimately security scanning. There are different stages of security scanning, different people who will deal likely with those different stages at different times with different resources, like I explained. The thing is, again, it really depends on the size of your team. Are you an individual contributor? Are you a team? Who's responsible for what? Right? So in previous events, I talked a lot about kind of the distinction between, first of all, how do we choose a security scanner? Well, that's dependent on your team. That's dependent on the resources available. And here we can make further distinctions. So it's all detailed in the blog post, but basically there are different types of security scanners. First of all, we can differentiate between paid tools, proprietary, enterprise tools, and then open source tools, okay? And I'm dealing with the open source tools within Aqua. I'm working with Trivy, our open source security scanner. And the thing is, with Trivy, a lot of the things to manage it and so on, you have to set it up by yourself. You have to learn how to set up Trivy, how to manage Trivy. There's nobody who does it for you, right? Because it's an open source tool. It has lots and lots of different features, but you will have to learn how to use them. Now, that kind of onboarding is resource intensive. First of all, you need the time, or you need to provide team members the time to get started with Trivy. Then the next thing is that once you have set it up, you want to make sure that Trivi also works with your existing stack and with other tools. And you want to make sure that with different security scanners. Now the thing is, with a tool such as Trivi, it's a very mature security scanner. So there are lots of integrations, extensions, plugins, and so on available for you already. Also, the other thing is, if you're working by yourself or in a team and you don't want to learn different tools, Trivi is an all-in-one security scanner. So if you don't want to deal with multiple different tools and learning multiple different tools, you want to make sure you choose a security scanner that can do all of your different scans. Because Trivi, for example, operates under a pattern of, like, for example, for the CLI, it has a certain pattern of how you structure your commands. You say, Trivi, what do you want to scan? And then the resource you want to scan. And in between, you provide the flags. It's very, it's like that. I will blend it in here. Yeah, but this is the first part of it. So, depending on the size of your team, the resources available, also the goals within your team. What do you want to achieve by implementing a security scanner? Then also, how are the skills within your team? What kind of security scanner do you want to choose? Those are all factors that will influence which security scanner you want to use, right? Another thing is your existing tech stack. I just mentioned that, but if you, for example, heavily using Docker Desktop, you might want to use a security scanner that has a Docker Desktop extension. If you're using, if you have development clusters for all of your engineers, you want to have a security scanner that can also easily scan those local development clusters. All those are factors, right? There are multiple different factors, and like this little video, this little overview is not going to give it justice of like all of the different factors that you should take into account. Again, there's more detail in the blog post. I will write a different blog post about choosing a security scanner as well. Now, diving more into security scanning by itself. So the thing is, once you have a security scanner, you want to make sure that you scan on your resources, especially your Kubernetes resource, on a continuous basis. Kubernetes is built to provide you with this really dynamic, fast-moving environment, right? It's built so you can deploy on a day-to-day basis, right? Maybe every hour if you feel like it, and test continuously. And we talk about continuous testing, we talk about GitOps to automate our processes, but we don't talk as much about continuous security scanning. If you deploy as often as you could do with Kubernetes-based cloud-native environments, then you also want to scan for security issues on a continuous basis. So keep that in mind. When you get started with Kubernetes, you also want to get started with security scanning. Now, that's something that I did wrong, I would say, when I got started in the cloud-native space. I got started with security scanning quite recently, about like 8 months ago, before I joined Aqua Security. Okay? I'm by no means a security expert, but the thing is, I got started in the cloud-native space and I never scanned my configuration files, my YAML manifest, my Terraform files, or similar. I never really scanned it for misconfiguration issues, for vulnerabilities. I never did it. Like, yes, I follow best practices of choose up-to-date container images, don't use the latest tag for your container images, define users, define environments, don't make your images environment specific, don't expose secrets. Those are all things that people will tell you when you get started. However, I never used a security scanner to look at those things specifically. And security scanners such as Trivi are supposed to be used by security professionals, but also by people like you and me who are not security professionals, right? So again, I highly suggest you to get started with security scanning and with configuration scanning. There's a lot that I learned about configuration files, especially YAML, Kubernetes manifests, and their configuration by using configuration scanners, misconfiguration scanners. So yeah, that's about the video. It's now 14 minutes long. I hope it was useful. Do let me know if you want to see anything specific to security scanners, anything different. If you have any questions, please reach out. Yeah. Again, below is the blog post with the more precise explanation if you fancy that. If you like this video, please hit the like button. It would mean a lot to me. If you really enjoyed this video, subscribe to my channel for upcoming videos. I would love to see you in one of my next videos. Have an amazing day. Bye bye.